Hey everybody. Alright, I'm going to do a quick demo on starting a digital painting and how I like to work. Everyone's going to work a slightly different way, and that's okay. I'll just show you how I start. I've got this picture of my dog here, and I adjusted the colors a little bit. This is going to be my reference. I'm just going to do a quick portrait of my dog. So I'm going to drag these over into my workspace here, and I'm going to merge these two layers. And this is going to be my reference, so I'm just going to have it like right next to where I'm drawing here. Make it a little bit bigger. So I've already kind of set up this file. I think it's 15 inches by 15 inches, yeah. And I made a gray background just so I can see it's like a good neutral background so you can see light and dark a little bit more easily instead of the white background. Which I'll get more into that in a second. For right now, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit just to get rid of some of this background. So I'm going to grab my eraser tool, and I'm using my tablet, and I have this turned on for the pressure sensitivity for the opacity of the eraser. So if I don't push down too hard, it's not erasing a lot, and then if I push down a little bit harder, it erases more and gets a little larger in size too. So I'm just going to go around, clean this up. And I'm still using the left and right brackets to make the brush size larger and smaller. As I get closer here, I'm making it a little bit smaller and zooming in a little bit closer. This doesn't have to be perfect because I'm just using it as a reference, just to look at while I'm drawing. But I still want to know where his head begins and ends over here. Alright, this is probably close enough for now. I'm also going to switch him around so he's facing the other side. I don't know why. I just feel like doing that. So I flipped him horizontally. Now we can kind of fit up in this corner. Okay, so I've got my gray background. I've got my reference ready to go here. Now I'm going to make a new layer to start working on. I'm going to hit B for my brush tool. You can see it's still pretty small. I'm going to use this right bracket to make it a little bit bigger. Make sure the opacity is on over here. I have smoothing on 10%. Smoothing is going to help you make smooth lines. So I'll just show you, for example, if I turn it all the way down, I'll try and make a straight line. Oh wait, I gotta change the color here. Let's say I'm trying to make a straight line. It's not too bad actually. It's not my best line. But now let's try it with the smoothing turned up. Kind of lagging a lot actually. I don't know why it's doing that. But it's a little bit smoother. I'm not a huge fan of the smoothing thing. It's usually not up that much. This wasn't a great example of it. But if you need really smooth, perfect lines, you can mess around with the smoothing tool and erase these. I usually have it pretty low, or sometimes it's just totally off, because it's not something you want to get used to. There's a lot of things in digital painting that you can develop bad habits, which I'll probably talk about a bit today. You don't want to rely too much on these like magic tools, and you still want to be good at drawing. Okay, the hardness is pretty low. So the pressure size means that as I push down harder, the brush will get bigger in size. So push down harder here, you see it got a little bit wider, but I also have this on here, the pressure sensitivity for opacity. So if I push lighter, it's not as dark. And I push harder, it gets much darker. Okay, let me get started. So I'm not going to start with black. I'm going to start with more of like a darker gray. I'm just going to lighten the background just a little bit. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with just like a value study, which means I'm only going to be working in black and white, and then I'm going to do colors after, so I don't have to worry about colors right away. I'm going to start off with a pretty big brush here. It's moving really slow, I think, because I'm recording on the screen here. I'm just getting the outline of his head. And these first lines are never perfect. So I'm just going to kind of keep moving around, trying to find the right lines here. So what I could do is go in and just trace over my reference image, which would probably be a little bit faster and might even look a little bit more accurate. But like I said before, that's a really bad habit. You don't want to do that too much because your drawing skills are just going to get kind of stunted. You want to be able to look at what you're seeing and draw from it. So don't ever stop drawing still life, like draw still life objects from direct observation and use pencil on paper or pen on paper, whatever you have. Don't get too used to just tracing over your reference image and copying it that way. I know some digital artists that can only do that, and they're actually kind of afraid to get away from that, which is sad. So all I'm saying is don't stop working on paper using traditional materials, even if you're practicing the digital illustration. I don't want you to develop bad habits. So I'm going to make this brush a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to lightly put in some more of these shadows here. Sorry it's lagging so much. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just like we would do with our layer mask project, when we have black and white down here on our for our two different colors, you can hit X to go back and forth between them. Now I have white, I'm going to start putting in the lighter shapes here. And again, this isn't going to be perfect the first time around. But we're just going to keep moving around our drawing, or painting, whatever it is, and slowly get the right thing to emerge. So between the light and dark, and then using the eraser tool, we're kind of sculpting our little creature here. But again, I'm not worried about colors just yet. And this method is it's pretty much what I do for oil paintings. This would be called a grisaille layer. It goes underneath all the different colored paint, like warm and cool temperatures. It's basically you're just doing a drawing with paint. It's just only grayscale. Because the values in the light and dark are going to be more important than the temperature shifts and color. The colors can kind of be whatever you want them to, but the light and dark, the difference between light and shadow and how they're interacting, that's what's going to make something look real or not, or have depth, even if it's a little more, like, less realistic than what I'm going for right now. This is just how I paint, so it's going to be more of a realistic feel to it. If you're doing something more cartoony, that's okay too, but just be aware that it's got to work with values before colors, and that's why I'm doing this. So now I just switch back to my eraser tool. I'm going to start kind of getting rid of wherever I kind of went outside my shape here. I'm also going to just move this over a little bit. Okay, so I'm back to my brush tool. I just hit X again, and I'm going to go back into the darker shadow shapes. And I'm just going to keep this process going back and forth until I like where my drawing's at. His ear's kind of weird over here. I need to fix this. So I'm going to go back to my light shape, which is pretty bright. I'm going to darken it just a little bit. It's still lighter than that darker midtone I'm using, but I'm starting to have my values meet up in the middle. Oh, whoops. Forgot to switch over to it. Now I'm back to my eraser tool. I need to adjust the shape again. But I'm just kind of going in a circle with the same process. light and dark, and then kind of rechecking my shape here. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of color here. I'm still going to do my light shape versus my shadow shape, but I'm going to grab my light shape color from somewhere in the lights over here. So I don't necessarily want like the highlight of the light shape, but I also don't want it to be too dark. I kind of want like an average of the whole thing. So I'll grab this one right here. I'm also going to make a new layer now. And I think I'll turn down the opacity of this one. Okay, actually, I'm going to start with the shadow shape color. I'm going to grab one of these darker purples in here. Let's see. This one. It's still not very dark, but you feel free to fast forward if this is getting a little monotonous. I'm kind of taking my time right here. Now I'm going to grab that lighter color over here. But I'm using that first grayscale drawing that I did as sort of like a blueprint for everything going on top of it now. I can think more about the light and dark of a color and the temperature of the color, and less about where things are going and if they're going in the right place or not. Although I could still change that if I want, it's just easier to focus on it this way. A little darker. So I'm going to start keeping track of my colors down here too, setting up a little palette. Because the smaller the amount of colors that I'm using, the more cohesive this is going to be in the end. So I don't want to sample too many colors directly from my reference. Alright, so I'm going to go for a much darker dark now, but I don't want it to be totally black like this photo here. I'm going to give it a little bit more color, which is another reason you want to be careful working directly from a photo like this and sampling directly from it, because you'll just end up with a painting that just kind of looks like a photo. I want to bring in a little more color. Let me put this down here, actually. And I'm kind of treating all the shadows as one shape right now. Even though I'm over here in his nose area where the shadows are a lot cooler, they're a lot more blue, purple, I'm still using this darker brown just to kind of keep all the shadows unified. Hold on one sec. I'm giving it that. What are you doing? Okay. No, I'm like recording my screen. Okay. Okay. Bye. Bye. Okay. My dog's going on a walk. So there's still something a little weird with how my drawing looks, so I might end up changing the shape again, even though I'm kind of committing to this drawing. Now that I'm putting color on it, I can still go in and adjust things if I need to. Okay, I'm going to grab some of this grayish, purple, pinkish. Let's see. It's also good to have this palette down here, so you can kind of put your colors up next to what you've already used. It's pretty close to this one here. I'll put some down just to see. It's always good to zoom out a lot too and see what I'm missing. Yeah, the whole front of his face looks a little bit inflated. So what we could do now, speaking of bad habits, I'm going to cheat real quick. I'm going to turn off this bottom layer. I'm going to cheat real quick and just warp my drawing. Okay, I think that's a little better. Now that I'm at this point, I also want to save. I'll call it Ollie Painting. My dog's name is Ollie. Hopefully my computer doesn't crash. Okay, we're good. So let's go another step darker with these shadows. I still don't want this totally dark black here, but let's get like a cooler shadow tone. When I say cooler, I mean as in not warm. Like this brown shadow here is very warm. I'm going for a cooler one now. Let's try this one. This is going to be pretty blue, but it could be cool. I'm going to bring up the hardness on my brush a little bit too. now that we're getting a little bit more detailed. Make our size a little smaller. Okay. It's still not crazy dark yet, but I'm trying to ease up on the really dark shapes, kind of saving the like really dark grays for the end, because I want to get as much color in there as I can. Even though I'm not really seeing this blue exactly, I kind of just know I want to have it in there. Not sure why, maybe it's just for the way I paint. I kind of know that I want to balance out my warm shadows with the cooler one. But that's not a rule. None of these are rules, it's just how I paint. I'm going to go back into my midtones again. I want to get some texture on this brush too, so I'm going to grab one of these fancier ones. I think, I'm trying to remember which one I use. Let's try this one. To make it a lot bigger though. That was kind of cool. Okay. think I need to go a little darker in that eye shape area, yeah. Let's see. No, that's pretty dark. Okay. I'm going to let myself zoom in a little bit here too. I like to stay kind of pretty far back just so I don't get too caught up with details. But I don't want this demo to be 6 hours long either, so I'm going to start finishing this up. I'm kind of retracing my steps here again with the shadows. This is more of a warm one again, but some of that blue is still showing through, and I think that'll be cool to see both of them at the same time at the end. Even though it's mostly brown, you still see some of that blue coming through the gaps there, which is just another personal preference. Okay, let's try a really dark purple. I'm going to get this little white stripe on his face in here, and I'll be done. Okay. Not my best work, maybe, but it's not too bad. But it's more about my process for right now. I just wanted to show you how you can build up those lights and darks in the beginning, and then kind of setting up your palette so you can keep working at the end. This is kind of like set up now that I could work on this for 6 more hours to make it look good, but that beginning process is what I wanted you to see here. So send me a message on Schoology if you have any questions about this. Hopefully your character designs are coming along okay. And yeah, I'll be on Schoology, so I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, thanks guys. Alright, in this video. Stop screen recording.